Good evening. There's something enormously important happening half a world away from us tonight. The nation of Egypt is probably changing forever, and it may not stop there. What appears to be a revolution is underway, led by protesters in the streets against the almost 30-year rule of President Hosni Mubarak. And late tonight, local time, he went on television. He gave a speech talking about freedom and democracy, saying he is replacing his own government tomorrow. We later learned when President Obama made his own statement tonight that the two had spoken for 30 minutes late in the day. Egypt has shut down the internet, which helped fuel this, after all, in a nation where over half the population is aged 30 and under. And importantly, this is not a Middle East protest against the U.S. or Britain or Israel. This is Egyptians protesting their own government. Here's where we're talking about. 3 major protests going on in 3 big Egyptian cities: Suez, Alexandria, and of course in Cairo. That's where our chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is standing by tonight. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The Egyptian army has deployed in much of downtown Cairo, and President Mubarak has broken his silence and promised some reform. But will that be enough to stop these demonstrations? Egypt is now in a state of revolt. Waves of thousands of protesters rushed riot police, who drove them back with water cannons and, more often, tear gas. Although the protesters have no single leader, the demonstrations were coordinated to begin at mosques. The clashes started almost immediately after Friday prayers. The protesters, now calling themselves revolutionaries, launched bottles, stones, and Molotov cocktails. They tore up the streets to throw blocks of pavement at riot police. Several hours into these protests, there is now nothing less than chaos in the center of Cairo. This city has not seen anything like this in decades, if ever. Downtown Cairo smoldered with anger and the debris of torched police vehicles. The crowds are continuing to grow with every hour here. They are now chanting one simple slogan: God is greater. And they hope to continue this protest until they topple Hosni Mubarak.
I want another president for Egypt.
I take freedom today! I take freedom today!
Tonight, President Mubarak went on national television and defended the crackdown, but also offered concessions, firing his cabinet and promising more reform. We will have new steps toward more democracy, he said, more freedom for citizens, new steps to reduce unemployment, to elevate the standard of living and improve services. It's unclear how many demonstrators and police have been injured or killed so far. We saw many succumb to tear gas. The protesters have now reached the main square here in downtown Cairo. People are being injured. We have seen several collapsing so far today, like this man. I don't think we can stay here any longer. As the day progressed, the protests began to change. A movement that started with students, human rights activists, and the unemployed turned increasingly Islamic. Shouts against President Mubarak merged with cries of Allahu Akbar, God is greater. They have now stopped for a moment of prayer. It is also an act of defiance, challenging the police to stop them. The Muslim Brotherhood, a group-long band here, says it joined the protests. Egypt has said it's cracking down to maintain order and to prevent the country from falling to Islamic radicals. As evening fell, police vehicles were attacked on bridges and set on fire. Mubarak imposed a curfew and for the first time called in the army. But when armored vehicles rolled into Cairo, they seemed to take no action against the demonstrators. In fact, crowds surrounded the military vehicles, climbed on top of them, cheered the soldiers, and called on them to join the movement. President Mubarak, Brian, has reshuffled his cabinet several times in the past. Protesters we spoke to tonight say this time it's not enough. Brian?
So, Richard, question is, what is this exactly? It is citizens and not like the black face mask people. I did see some people brought their children to see the protest today, families watching on balconies. But at the same time, as you reported, there is a religious aspect to it, so it's probably hard to guess end game, what kind of society, government they would want if successful?
It's very hard to know because this is not a centrally organized protest. It began with the unemployed, students, people who have had enough of the corrupt system that has been in place in Egypt for a long time. But then, as the protests started to gain momentum, Islamic movements, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is by far the biggest underground organization in Egypt, started to become involved. And many people in this country are worried that if this protest continues and seriously topples the regime, the Muslim Brotherhood will try and make a run for power. Brian?
All right, Richard Engel. Richard, will come back to you for more of your reporting in Cairo.